Doesn't it seem like yesterday we were graduating high school and about to embark on a new exciting chapter of life? And now here we are, a few decades later, also about to embark on a whole new chapter of life called retirement. That's why I'm so glad that Aaron Kirsch and Laura Zettel-Watson are joining me again this week to go even deeper into the topics covered in their Rewarding Retirement Workbook. Aaron Kirsch is a certified financial planner and wealth advisor. Laura Zettel-Watson is a professor of psychology and director of aging studies at California State University, Fullerton. The Rewarding Retirement Workbook is a great retirement planning resource and goes well beyond the nest egg into areas that we don't often think about when it comes to retirement, but we really should. It's a good conversation. Stay tuned.
Nobody's ever gonna take your place. Yeah, I think we should meet in the middle. I follow you cause you're the light of the day. I need you like you need me, it's so simple. It's so simple.
Hey Gen X Jugglers! Today's episode is brought to you by StatGuard Plus, the world's first thermostat guard with a built-in combination lock, so you don't have to worry about keeping up with that tiny key. We all know about the thermostat wars. Your teenager comes in, dressed in layer upon layer, topped with a huge hoodie, says, "I'm hot," and runs to turn down the thermostat. An elderly loved one comes by to visit, and their idea of the perfect climate is a crisp 90 degrees. So they tootle on over and adjust the thermostat. That can get expensive. We want our loved ones to be comfortable, and we can make that happen. But we don't want a huge energy bill. Don't let someone else spend your hard-earned dollars when you could be spending your money where it matters most. StatGuard Plus is made out of high-quality polycarbonate and is super easy to install. Whether it's for your home or your place of work, install StatGuard Plus today and start controlling your costs instantly. Visit StatGuardPlus.com and enter promo code GenX10 for 10% off right now. Welcome back to the Gen X Juggler Podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I am so glad to welcome back Aaron Kirsch and Laura Zettel-Watson to the podcast today. Thanks, guys, for coming back. I appreciate you being here.
Pleasure to be back, Deb.
So good to be back.
Last time we got together and talked about retirement, I love that conversation because it wasn't just how much money do you have in the bank? How much money are you holding away? What does that look like? Even though that's really important, that's just a piece of the whole puzzle. And you guys in your Rewarding Retirement Workbook bring in the whole puzzle. So last time we talked about the importance of having goals, the importance of taking care of your health, social relationships, just all the things that maybe we don't consider when we hear the word retirement and preparing for retirement. There's just so much more to say on this topic. Erin, you mentioned that there are two types of happiness, and that has an effect on our retirement years and our years now.
Well, we all want to be happy, right? We all want to enjoy our lives. And there are two ways to look at happiness. One is called hedonic, and one is called eudaimonic. And actually, Laura's probably better at explaining this because she's the psychologist. But I'll just briefly introduce. Hedonic is pleasure, and eudaimonic is the rewarding, the satisfaction you get from achieving long-term goals. So I'll let Laura dive a little bit deeper into that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure, of course. And I think these are really fun concepts because they capture different types of happiness that we can go after. And I think for us, the most important piece for listeners to really, the take-home point is the importance of the balance between the two of these. So hedonic goals are what they sound like. That's the idea where we get this idea of hedonism from, hedonistic goals. These are things that we chase for immediate pleasure. And we need to have things like that in our lives. There have to be things that we can look forward to and get immediate gratification from. So we definitely have certain things in life that are hedonic that bring us pleasure right away. But it is equally, or maybe even more so, important to chase after or to set goals that include the eudaimonic types of happiness achievement. And this includes those things that are more of our long-term goals. So anything that we kind of set our sights on that we're willing to sacrifice a little bit for now in order to meet that goal and have that happiness later. So one of the the big ones I know is, it would be so easy for me to go through a drive-through and pick up, some fast food for dinner. It's easy. It probably will taste pretty yummy. Kids wouldn't complain too much. In the long run, though, even though that would be maybe pleasurable for this evening, and it's okay every now and then, it wouldn't be the way to do life every day. We have to have health goals, and those health goals don't include that drive-through run every day. So if I want to be able to keep up with grandkids someday, run around and, crawl around on the floor with them and be able to get back up, I need to make good choices for my future as well. So that's kind of setting myself up for the eudaimonic piece and that self-realization that comes when we can achieve those long-term goals. And the balance between the two is what's really key.
Right. Research actually shows that you actually do need both. So even if you're trying to lose weight and you're tempted by that ice cream cone, and that ice cream cone is going to set you back a little bit on that eudaimonic goal of actually achieving weight loss, you still can indulge a little bit. It's healthy to do that every now and then.
Yeah, that's good. I was a teacher in my former life. I taught English, and one of the things that we're taught is how our students need, even our students who really, really struggle, we've got the long-term goal of getting in everything we need for the whole year, and our students that really struggle need what they called islands of competency. Those moments that rewarded their efforts as they were heading toward the goal, or a moment, just a break, an island as opposed to just swimming in this ocean of knowledge. And that's what I thought of when you guys were talking about that, the importance of that balance. We can't just always be looking at the thing that's way out in the distance and think that we're going to keep the consistency without little moments of pleasure on our way to get there. So it's interesting how all of those psychological truths really cross all the boundaries of life and anything that we're trying to achieve. And that's how you know something's really, really true, when it applies to a lot of different areas of life, for sure.
Absolutely.
So what is the PERMA model? PRMA, the PERMA model.
PERMA is an acronym, and P stands for positive emotions, E stands for engagement, R stands for relationships, M stands for meaning, and A stands for achievement. And this is something that Martin Seligman came up with. He is a positive psychologist. Laura, one of the fathers of positive psychology, right? Mm-hmm. When you think of psychology kind of grew up as this discipline that tried to figure out why the human mind does what it does. And it initially focused on all the problems. But then Seligman and some of his colleagues started focusing on what makes humans thrive, what makes them happy, what makes them have good relationships, good emotions. And Laura, do you want to dig a little bit deeper into how that works?
Sure. So this acronym, PERMA, and these different types of emotional pursuits, and really the piece that I love about it, and I know I mentioned this last week, the social piece with those personal relationships and engagement in life, all of those pieces come into this model as well. So you'll see a lot of kind of repeats on the critical components that keep showing up in these theories that end up being really successful in describing a lot of what we see in the research. The piece that positive psychologists, sort of the holy grail of positive psychology, if you will, is trying to figure out where happiness comes from. Where does happiness come from? How do we get to life satisfaction? And this particular model really demonstrates in the research findings that Seligman and his followers have really kind of found is this idea that the pursuit of meaning is the element that seems to be the strongest contributor to our life satisfaction. So really having something in life that we can pursue as meaningful is going to be key, and then followed by engagement, and then pleasure. So that those hedonic or eudaimonic pursuits, right? So the research is really backing up this idea that happiness is attainable. It really does require on our part, though, having some search for meaning, some pursuit of something important to us that we can search for and hopefully find.
Absolutely. And that's why purpose is so important in our lives, not just going through life kind of robotically ticking off the responsibilities that we have in front of us. Even though our responsibilities are so important, framing them within our purpose and our values is where that meaning comes from. Would you say? That's kind of the way I see that.
Yeah, I think so, Deb.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think, especially as we get older, when we're younger, we have purpose, we have career ideas, we have possibly ideas of building a family, we have meaning, right? But as we get older and our roles start changing, it's really important to make sure we continue that meaning. And especially in retirement, people who are career people or people who spent all their life raising their family, now when you get into retirement, it's really important to find some new meaning once those roles that you used to be in start changing. This is why it's really important to think this through. So many people go into retirement just thinking, oh, I don't have to go to work anymore, or I don't have to raise my family anymore. But they don't necessarily have a North Star to find meaning, to make their life meaningful, and to have good things that they can focus on, activities they can do that gives them that sense of purpose in life.
That's such a good area of focus when you think about retirement, because it's almost like life just hands us purpose, almost like on a silver platter for a while. Our job has things we just have to do, and our children and all of the things. And then we get to this point where there's maybe not a lot of newness in our life anymore as well when we get to the retirement stage. That's what I'm noticing is it would be really easy for my life right now to just be status quo, only with fewer children in the house, only with less people in my life than I'm used to having. And that's not happiness at all. You have to find that purpose, that newness, that engagement in life still. And yeah, we don't think about that. We think about it as an end to working, not a beginning of that next chapter.
Well put.
So important. Okay, so the PERMA model is positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. So, you know what? That makes me think of something I used to talk to my students about back in the day, which is maintaining a growth mindset, being willing to learn and grow. That was hard for me to pull out of high schoolers, the desire to actually grow in our pursuit of literary genius. But just reminding them it's important to say, hey, what do I not know and what would I like to know and what could benefit me in the future? Let's think growth minded. So that's important. A growth mindset is also important in retirement in those last 20 or so years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just for children. And I think this is something that a lot of the parenting books have really focused on, but we don't tend to see it much outside of the educational realm. This is a theory, growth versus fixed mindset, that came from Carol Dweck. And it really kind of took off not only in the educational realm, but also in the popular press. So this idea is that we can have a fixed mindset. And I think maybe many of us traditionally, the traditional kind of realm in school was this idea of, well, you're just naturally smart or you're not. And I think a lot of kids, at least in my generation, kind of unfortunately had that idea, or that was sort of cast upon kids of like, you either got it or you don't. And these are this idea that our qualities, the things about us, are carved in stone. Kind of goes back to that nature nurture idea in general basic developmental psychology, that we're just born with it. You either have it or you don't. Whereas the growth mindset is really a fabulous, simple concept of recognizing that most of these qualities that we talk about that are important in education, and now that we're seeing this in retirement as well, can be cultivated. That if we put in some effort, we can be successful in making change, in progressing, in improving, and still achieving. And so as a teacher, just better than anybody, that instilling a growth mindset in children, no matter who they are, gives them that ability to grow from whatever their starting point may be. So instead of sort of capping kids at what we believe might be, well, were you born with this or not? We're giving them this opportunity to take these skills and practice them and grow with them. And the same holds true in retirement. In fact, it's the foundation for successful retirement. We can't sit back and think, well, we've just peaked. We're done. Everything we've done, we're done and it's fixed and who I'm going to be is set. We can continue to grow, and we should take that growth mindset with us well into retirement and beyond.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I do remember when we were in school, I feel like for Gen Xers, it was more like, these are the smart kids. These are the kids who can do it. These are the kids who can't. And then we would all graduate, and sometimes that script would flip. The kids who were the ones who maybe weren't ever going to make an A on a test were out there just killing it in the trades and making more money than the rest of us who are still paying college loans or whatever. And so I really like that idea of realizing that you can still learn, you can still grow whenever you're in retirement. I've learned so much just this year, and the excitement. I always called myself a heck no techno. Like, if it's technology, I don't want anything to do with it. If we could go back to, a chisel and tablet, that would be great for me. And so I just kind of took myself out of that game. I was like, no, if it was a computer situation, I'd be like, here, come here, you smart people do that. This year, I've learned so much I never thought I could do. Just editing a podcast, editing audio, things that I thought were for somebody else, that I took on just to see if maybe I could. It's so fun. It's so fun to even start out really bad at it and then get better. That's just fun. And so, I encourage everybody, if you feel like you're where you're at and you're not going to get any better, pick something. Just pick something and see if you might enjoy it, and give yourself a chance to grow and feel that growth.
Yes, love that. And if I can follow up on that really quickly, This is a conversation I've just had with my teenage son, and it applies in retirement as well. Just because you're not good at something the first time you try it doesn't mean you can't do it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't keep at it. Nobody got better by not practicing, right? You got to practice. You got to keep at it. If you love it, keep doing it, and you'll get there. And I think that same logic that we might tell our kids goes for retirement.
Yes.
Try something new.
That reminds me of a conversation I had with my son, who's a gymnast, and he'd say when he was younger, Dad, I can't do this. And I said, the only time I'm going to ever allow you to say I can't is if you add yet at the end of that phrase. Mm-hmm. And so I think, especially us Gen Xers and people who are looking toward retirement, just you might not be able to do something yet, but you will.
Yet. I love that. I recently heard the phrase failing up, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Just, be willing to fail, because every time you take a chance and try something new, if you fail, you're not going to fail in the same way next time because you've learned. So you're always failing up. And it's easy in our stage of life to just be comfy, know what we're good at and be comfy. But there's just a life-giving aspect to growing and trying and keeping life going, for sure. And speaking of keeping life going, activity in retirement is important too. In what ways can we continue to be active in our lives when our former life has stopped the way we knew it, I should say? Not stopped completely, stopped the way we knew it.
Well, Deb, there's so many things you can do in retirement because you don't have any more specific obligations of family or career or things like that. So it's a great way to reinvent yourself. So there's several things you can do. Some people want to keep working. They just enjoy it. I don't think that's me. I don't know if that's everyone else, but there are some people who just are addicted to work and they want to work full time or change careers. Maybe they want to try something new, something they've always wanted to do, and maybe they can work part-time to keep that activity going, but not work so hard and work themselves to death the way that they were doing when they were in their career. So that's one thing. Another great activity is volunteering, transferring your skills to younger generations or helping people less fortunate than you. This is a great way to add meaning to your life by doing something for others. In fact, there's lots of research out there that shows that being selfless is really helpful in creating that meaning, and giving back really gives you a lot of happiness as well. When people are receiving donations, it tends to be that they're not as happy as the people giving those donations. So volunteering is another thing that people can do. Religious involvement, research finds, is really important for some people. If you're religious, it's a great way to build community, have that community have purpose, have meaning. So those are 3 activities. And Laura, do you want to go over a few others as well?
Yeah, good. You left some of my favorites on the table. One that I absolutely love is continuing education. I think that a lot of people think school is for the young, and that is just patently false. At my university, we have a huge, and by huge, I mean over 1,000 participants. We've got an Osher Lifelong Learning Institute on our campus. There are hundreds of these across the country. So if you're listening and you're interested in continuing education, I absolutely recommend you check one out. Find one near you. They allow for a very low nominal fee, the ability to take a variety of courses, and they can be academic in nature. So the history of the fall of Rome. They can also be, skill-based. You can learn to knit or to speak Portuguese, or they can be super fun, where you're just, learning about stamp collecting or coin collecting or trains or something that might pique your interest. It's also a great opportunity to meet others with similar interests. So absolutely recommend continuing education. The one that I'm looking the most forward to is travel. This is an excellent way to spend some time in retirement. You can enhance relationships with the people you're already close to. You can go out and meet new people. And there is no better way to learn about yourself and the world than to get the new perspectives that travel provides. It's also, I think this is at the top of everyone's list, being able to pick up some of the hobbies or creative activities we had to leave behind when we, started working and raising families and, life just got too busy. There were a lot of things we probably had to give up that we can get back to. Also an excellent time to try something new, like we just talked about. Get out there, try something that sounds like it's going to be interesting. And I think, what Erin and I always like to say is this is a toolbox of ideas and activities. Variety is crucial. You don't want just one tool. If you have a toolbox in your home, most of you probably do, you have a variety of different tools in there because different tools get different jobs done. This is one of those situations where the more variety you have in your day-to-day, the more opportunity there's going to be to find that happiness and that, to pursue that satisfaction in life. So you just want to avoid the Groundhog Day routine where you wake up every morning and the day is the same as the day before. Try to mix it up and, what do they say? Variety is the spice of life. Absolutely true in retirement too.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And we do want a full toolbox of a lot of fun, good, interesting things to fill our days whenever we have all that good free time. Sometimes I've heard people say, like, I don't know about retirement. What if it's boring? Like I enjoy my job. I do want, to eventually stop working, but I'm just worried that retirement will be boring. Well, that's evidence it doesn't have to be. You just have to be willing to remember that you are you and you still have stuff to learn and your likes and your hobbies that it's so fun to revisit things that you haven't done in years because we do have that time that's really devoted to raising our families and getting them up and going or starting our careers and really focusing on that and honing in. So when life opens up just a little bit, that's so fun. And I would imagine that all of those things are why financial planning is so important because we do need the resources to be able to go out and live life. We don't have to be billionaires, but we need some resources for sure. And I know, Erin, that is your area of expertise is the financial planning. Would you talk to us about the most important pieces of that and why they're important?
Well, you're asking a financial planner to talk about financial planning. How much time do we have, Deb?
We are now doing a 5-part series. I'm just kidding.
Well, financial planning is so much more than just contributing to a retirement account. And if you haven't started financial planning, you should do so now. You should do so yesterday. And there's 6 main reasons why financial planning is so important. The first reason is longevity. Social Security started in 1935, about 90 years ago. And back then, the eligibility was age 65. Guess what the average lifespan was back then?
70.
It was
68.
61. It was 61. Today, so people really didn't live long in retirement back then. The current average lifespan in America is 78. So we are living longer. And if you look at advances in medicine, if you look at AI models and look at billionaires spending hundreds of millions of dollars on longevity, we are going to live even longer. So longevity is really important. You need to plan for that. As much money as you're putting away now, you need to look forward to how is that money going to last? How is that money going to pay for everything you needed to pay for? Because longevity is a major concern. Another way to look at another reason why financial planning is so important is we are making this transition. In our working years, we are in accumulation mode. We're building our investment portfolio. We're adding up as much money. We're putting our pennies into the piggy bank and accumulating. But when we get to retirement, we are no longer putting money in. We are moving into a distribution phase in life. And that is so much different from a planning standpoint, from a taxes standpoint, from an income standpoint. It's a very different kind of investing. So that's why financial planning is also so important, is to plan for that transition, know when it's going to happen, and know how you're going to do it. And even if you're just Gen X now and you're years away from retirement, starting that planning process now is a really good idea. I had mentioned taxes. Taxes is another reason why planning is so important. I like to say, there's a great expression, we want to pay Uncle Sam everything we are legally obligated to pay him, but we don't want to leave him a tip.
Right.
Yes. Another thing to think about when it comes to financial planning is risk. It's really important to protect yourself and protect your family. And it's not just saving up for retirement, it's also making sure you have the coverage to cover your family and everyone who depends on you in case something happens to you physically, if something happens, if you get hit by a bus, and also just other kinds of risk like property risk. What can you not afford to replace if you were to lose it? And how can you pass that risk on to perhaps an insurance company to cover that, whether it's your home, your car, or other valuable things? Two last things, Deb. One is support. I mentioned family. Who relies on you financially? And who are you going to need to support? Is it a family member who needs help financially? Is it a child who has special needs? These are things to consider, and this is why planning is so important. And finally, legacy. We want to make sure that we pass on to the people who are important to us and to the charities that are important to us. We pass on to them everything we can that's left over in an efficient way, in a tax appropriate way, in a way to make sure that who you want to get your assets gets them, and it's not caught up in probate court or some kind of legal battle. So those are the 6 reasons why financial planning is so important. And it just goes so far beyond just saving up and managing your investment accounts.
It really does. And it's so important to work with a financial planner because you guys think of things that we just don't. I had a conversation with a financial planner last year, and we were talking about Roth IRA versus traditional IRA. And I was like, well, when I take it out, I won't have taxes. That'll be awesome. And she's like, but what tax bracket would you be in if you did a traditional and you took it out? Could your tax bracket be lower then? And you'd pay. I was like, I did not. I just thought immediate reward. I won't notice it because I pay taxes on my income anyway. And then when I take it out, I won't have it. But it's so important to really listen to our financial planners and go see them, especially if we haven't started yet. And I worry about the Gen X groups that have not started their retirement yet. We were very in the now, and the economy has been a very different place for us, I feel like. So yeah, find a financial planner. I had a friend of mine.
Better late than never.
Yes, better late than never. Exactly. A friend of mine was telling me just today that he's noticing in midlife that he looks back a lot to, oh, when I was 20, if I had done this, then I would have all of this now. Okay, when I was 30, if I had done this, man, if I hadn't made that dumb decision or that not great decision, then I would have all this. And he told me today, he said, I'm going to start pretending that I'm 70 and I'm looking back at 49 and thinking, what did I wish I had done at 49? And just start doing that now. I think we really need to stop looking behind and wishing we had done and start looking ahead at what we need to do so that we're not looking back at our 40s and 50s going, wish I'd done that.
There's a researcher at UCLA, I believe his name is Hal Hershfield, and he has done a lot of research on how we think of our future selves as a completely different person. We don't think of it as us. And he's done some experiments, and he did this really interesting thing where he would show people images of themselves. The computer would give a simulation of what they would look like 10, 15, 30 years from now. And those people who saw an older version of themselves tended to contribute more to their retirement account after seeing that image.
Ooh, that makes so much sense. Because you've actually now got that person whom you're supporting in the future in your line of vision. That's so good. I was thinking about the idea of, within this conversation that I was having earlier, I was thinking about the idea of hindsight being 20/20 and how it's time to put on our future glasses. Because that 20/20 doesn't help us just a whole lot. But if we just kind of put on those future glasses, we all need readers. Let's add our future glasses to those and start looking at the real future and the real us. It comes a lot faster than we think. I mean, the past 50 years have just flown in my world. So, being prepared and planning financially is so important, and it's coming. We just have to think about that. Whenever we stopped recording on our last podcast, one thing that you brought up that you wanted to talk about in the future, Erin, was environment and the part environment plays in our retirement planning.
Yeah, most people live in where they're living now because of circumstance or by choice. It's circumstance. This is where you were born. This is where you grew up. This is where your family is. Or maybe it's choice. This is where I moved to for a relationship, or this is where I moved to for a career. And an important question to ask is, yeah, you're living here now. Do you like where you live? And can you foresee yourself living there in the future? And if you are foreseeing yourself living in the future, will you be able to live the same life in the environment you're in now when you're 70, when you're 80, when you're 90? What kinds of things do you have to consider? And these are things that we address in our book. And Laura, I think you can dive into this because you're very much up on this subject matter.
Well, sure. I think when we think about where we want to stay, and even sometimes when we plan it, we're thinking about who we are now. And so I'm thinking, okay, at this age when I am mobile and, I love my 2-story home, with my big yard and all of these pieces, is that going to be ideal as I age, as maybe arthritis gets worse? And unfortunately, I am starting to already experience some of that. So I can anticipate that probably, unless we have some miracle cure in the next handful of years, that likely will be something I'm dealing with. As that gets worse, then maybe I'm becoming a bit more of a fall risk on my stairs in my 2-story home. Is that something to consider? The yard work involved in taking care of a large yard, that might be something else we want to think about. So we need to put ourselves in that future self and really ask, is this the ideal place for me to age? We do know from the research that we have a lot of benefits from staying in place. We call this aging in place. And most people, if we look at the research on both the baby boomers as well as Gen Xers, over 4/5 of them, 80%, want to stay in their homes. They want to stay in their locations. So that is really telling. I think we have this myth that everybody wants to move to Florida when they retire. And we do, have a lot of people moving for what we call amenity moves for the weather or amenities. But a lot of people want to stay in place, and it's good for them. It improves their physical and mental health if they're able to stay in their own homes, better life satisfaction. We even see decreased mortality rates in folks that are able to stay in their own homes. So that is really incredible. But that does require us to really think through home modifications. Is our home accessible? I had an injury several years ago where I, fell, shredded my ankle, was on a scooter for like a year. And I really learned about mobility and accessibility when I couldn't, my kitchen was downstairs and my only shower was upstairs. And so I could only come down once a day and I could only get back up once a day with help. And it really changes your concept of how hospitable is your own home to you and your loved ones as you are aging. So really kind of thinking those things through. Like I mentioned, very few people are actually moving. Research suggests that probably it's only about 4% of people over 65 are moving in any given year. Most of those moves are local to more conducive housing. Only a small portion of those, less than 20%, are people making those out-of-state moves or moving abroad. When people do choose to make those kinds of moves, it's chasing climate, it's chasing a particular social scene. Say, I want to live in a retirement community or on a golf course or near the ocean, adventure. We call these amenity moves. We also see a group of people that will move for what we call kinship moves. And these are people who may have, as Erin pointed out, moved at some point for a career or to be with a spouse or partner, and later in life may choose to kind of go back to where the rest of their family is. So, especially among the Gen Xers, many of us have moved far afield from where we were raised. But we do see a lot of people choosing that kinship movement. If they do go out of state, it's to go back to some place that is calling them.
One thing we mention in the book, because relationships are so important, and that's a theme that goes throughout the book, how important relationships are to our life. One thing we mention, or one thing we ask our readers is, do you want to walk to visit family? Do you want to, and friends? Do you want to drive to visit family and friends? Or do you want to fly to visit family and friends?
Yeah, that's something that we really need to think about. Talking about that, especially the relationships aspect. My parents came and lived with us for a little while. They were having just health issues where they just needed a decent amount of care at that time. And they eventually put a tiny home next to our home. And thank goodness their health improved. And they just started feeling just a lot better, which was good. But then they really started missing home. They missed their front yard, their front porch that they would drink coffee on, and just the familiarity. And so they moved back. They moved here in March of 2024, and they moved back in May of 2025. And they're doing well, and I go up and see them and still do doctor's appointments and stuff. But that environmental element was real for them. They really needed to be in the home that they thought, it was the home they had built that was accessible for them into old age. And so they needed to be there. And having seen that firsthand, I completely get the environmental piece for sure.
Yeah. And for them to have that choice and that ability to go back, I think is absolutely critical. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that we really want readers and listeners to understand, that in this case, having control over what you have, where your options are and what you can do is really going to be key here. And that is part of the planning process, is understanding that at some point you may need assistance, you may need help. If you plan for that and you have that in the greater scheme where you're making decisions, when you're able to make decisions about how you want things to go later, when maybe you won't be able to make those decisions, we find that time and again, that's where the life satisfaction following those moves comes from, is the individuals having their say in what they want that to look like. And planning that as part of the whole retirement package is absolutely key.
Mm-hmm. We need to think about that for ourselves as we get older, and the older adults that are in our lives right now that we love, the importance of familiarity, of environment, and the role that plays in their lives for sure. This is such good information that you've brought us again this week. I appreciate you coming on. You are welcome to come back anytime. Closing thoughts before we end this wonderful podcast that I've enjoyed so much.
Oh, it is always an absolute pleasure to chat with you, Deb. I think our ultimate message for listeners is it's not about creating a one-size-fits-all retirement, and that is absolutely not what we're plugging. It's about discovering your ideal retirement, and that needs to be based on your unique values, on your personal relationships, on your thoughts and dreams and desires, and what's important to you. As I know Erin always likes to say, you only get one shot at this. You don't get a second take. So, plan it out, think about it, and do what is best for you the first time around.
Absolutely.
So great to think about doing that now. If you're a Gen Xer, retirement might seem to be pretty far off, but it's going to get here much sooner than you think. You shouldn't wait until the day after your retirement party to plan out your retirement. Start thinking about things now. Start planning things out now because you'll be more prepared. I had mentioned this before, I think, in our last podcast. We spend much more time planning a 2-week vacation than the 20 years we're going to live in retirement. Plan that out. The more you're planning it, the better things are going to be for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining me again. And everybody go out and get the Rewarding Retirement Workbook and go to rewardingretirementworkbook.com to learn more. Thanks so much. Come back anytime.
Thank you.
Nobody's ever gonna take your place. Yeah, I think we should meet in the middle. I follow you 'cause you're the light